Had a nice lunch. Just a couple of housekeeping items. In just a minute, we're going to start our afternoon keynote. We will have a coffee break and book signing. Just afterwards, from 4 to 4:30. 4:30 to 6 is our next set of concurrent sessions. You have dinner from 6 to 7:30. And hopefully you will join us this evening for our cultural event, Theater of Witness. We'll be showing a film. This is a local producer and director, Teja Stupucek. I may have butchered her last name. She has been working in Northern Ireland for quite some time and has recently put together a group of people to share experiences of living in Philadelphia and working through police issues of the criminal justice system. And I believe that we'll have a constable from the Philadelphia Police with us tonight to talk a little bit about and narrate for us some of the experience of working on the film, which is also a play. So I hope that you'll join us. That starts sharply at 8 p.m., so we encourage you to come back with a few minutes to spare. And then, of course, we'll begin again tomorrow with our 8 a.m. breakfast. So we're really excited for you to hear our next speaker. I'm going to turn it over to Polly, who's going to say a few words, and then we'll get started. Thank you.
We acknowledge that the land we're meeting on today is Lenape land, that it was appropriated through the processes of colonization, and we pay respect and honor to the indigenous peoples around the world who continue to resist ongoing colonization.
I want you to think about 36 years. For those of you who are older than 36, I want to think about where you were 36 years ago. For those of you who are younger than 36, and we've got a nice group of people who are younger than that, I want you to think about your elders, your family, what was happening in their lives to the extent that you know. And I want you to think about spending 36 years behind bars, under torturous conditions, for the crime of thinking. The crime of seditious conspiracy, which means thinking and talking to others about freeing your homeland. I want you to think about 110. For those of you older than 110, I want you to, no, sorry, never mind. Okay. 110 years, U.S. Marines landing, colonizing, taking over the island of Puerto Rico. And one way or another, and one level or another, there has been occupation and resistance for that entire 110 years. Now I want you to think about a year ago, and maybe two, when at these stages and in these meetings of this association and related associations, we worked and pledged and signed our names for the freedom of the next speaker. And just a little over a year ago, in fact, he walked free. I want you to think of Mandela, who could have, like Oscar, walked free many, many years earlier, but decided that freedom from a point of weakness, even wonderful, well-thought personal freedom, from a point of weakness for his people was untenable. Oscar made similar choices and similar political calculus. I want you to think about Gandhi and the fact that after Gandhi got to a certain level of fame, after he got back to India from his time in South Africa, he spent years traveling around his country to learn about the people of India and what they needed. And I can tell you that I have been honored to be with Oscar in parts of this last year, as he too has traveled around Puerto Rico without assumptions, without forecasts, but listening, careful listening, to figure out what can best be done on the grassroots level to help the people of Puerto Rico. Peace and Justice Studies Association, in conjunction with Fellowship of Reconciliation, and very special in conjunction with the Oscar Lopez Rivera Fund, was part of a human rights delegation, a national international human rights delegation this last spring. It was special because Oscar was the central piece of it, and his organization was the main host group, and it's the first such delegation, but not the last, that they will be doing. And the fundamental headline, the fundamental lesson that became clear to all of us as we summarized our visits to 7 or 8 towns. We were only there for a little over a week, but we didn't stop. We were working, we were on the road. The number one summary was that yes, Puerto Rico has faced devastation. Yes, Puerto Rico has faced disaster. But that devastation is not named Maria or the name of any other hurricane. The name of that devastation is colonialism. Ladies and gentlemen, help me in giving an incredible warm welcome. Great honor to have as our keynote speaker this afternoon, Oscar Lopez Rivera.
Good afternoon to all of you. For those of you who were part of the struggle to get me out of prison, I want to express my profound gratitude. There was a small mistake that Matt made. The United States government invaded and occupied Puerto Rico in 1898, so it's 120 years that Puerto Rico has been under the boot of the United States government. Last night, there were mentions of 3 things: violence, nonviolence, and peace. Since colonialism is a crime against humanity, it is impossible for Puerto Rico to have had nonviolence, not to have violence, and for Puerto Rico not to have any peace. Because from the moment that the United States government entered Puerto Rico, it already had an agenda for what it was going to do in Puerto Rico, how it was going to treat the Puerto Rican people, what it was going to do with our land, with the waters that surround Puerto Rico. And there is not anything positive that we can say about those 120 years of U.S. occupation of Puerto Rico. As soon as the United States government arrived in Puerto Rico, it criminalized any person who wanted Puerto Rico to be an independent and sovereign nation. By 1898 already, it had identified 2 Puerto Ricans who were sent to prison for publishing there's 2 print presses and for publishing small articles. Both of them were sent to prison. Both of them were sentenced to hard labor. And 6 months after the first one came out of prison, he was dead. That pattern has continued ever since then. I would like to say to you that we have a Puerto Rican woman. There's one woman for one case, and there's another woman for another case right now in U.S. federal prisons. The first woman that I'm going to talk about is Ana Belén Montes. The other one is Nina Dross. Nina Dross was involved last year with the workers' union, when the workers were mobilized for the 1st of May for International Workers' Day, and there was a confrontation between them and the police. She's right now serving a 3-year sentence. But Ana Belén Montes is a different story altogether. Ana Belén Montes was a CIA analyst, and while doing her job, she realized what the United States government was doing towards Cuba, because she was the person who specialized on the Cuban intelligence division. And she decided to turn over the documents to the Cuban government. In court, she said that she had the duty to do that because she was afraid of what the United States government had in its agenda for Cuba. And for me, it is a very, very important thing for a Puerto Rican woman to dare to do what she did. And it's important because she did it not to sell any kind of intelligence to Cuba. She did it for herself as a conscientious person who said, I cannot tolerate this, I cannot allow this to go on without helping the Cuban people to know exactly what the United States has in store for them. Now, allow me to continue with the issue of colonialism. In 1917, the United States government decided to impose a false citizenship on the Puerto Rican people. It is false because no Puerto Rican in Puerto Rico since 1917 has been allowed to participate in the federal elections. We do not choose or elect the President of the United States. We do not choose or elect the members of the Senate and the Congress, and because we don't have any representation in either of the two branches, we don't have any representation in the judiciary branch of the U.S. government. Every American citizen, probably most of you, can do what we cannot do from Puerto Rico. That is not citizenship. The only reason the United States government passed the Jones Act was because it was getting ready to get involved in World War I, and we became cannon fodder. World War I, we got drafted. Puerto Ricans who refused to be drafted were sent to prison. World War II, Puerto Ricans were drafted. Puerto Ricans who refused to go to World War II were sent to prison. Korean War was probably where the Puerto Ricans were really sacrificed. And anyone who's interested should read about the 165th Infantry Division, which was the Puerto Rican division in Korea. Look at the way the United States government treated the Puerto Ricans who went to Korea. And this Puerto Rican who stands here in 1965 was drafted by the U.S. Army. When I received the letter, I was 22 years old. And at the bottom of that letter, there was a caveat that read, if you do not report to the induction center on the specified day, you can face up to 5 years in federal prison. And I chose to be drafted. I was not ready at all to go to any federal prison. I arrived in Vietnam in June 1966, and for 7.5 months I was an infantryman. I can talk about the horrors of war. I can talk about the ugliness of what we were doing in Vietnam. I can talk about the dehumanization that we were doing in Vietnam. So Vietnam was a lesson for me about war. I came home in 1967. And from the moment that I came home, I had a commitment to myself, and that was to really learn about what was the role of the United States government in Vietnam. Why the war? Because Lyndon Johnson said that the soldiers were being sent to Vietnam to bring freedom and democracy to the Vietnamese people. And it was the same bullshit that General Nelson Miles said to us when he arrived in Puerto Rico with his military forces. And it's probably, by the way, 2 years before that, in 1896, Nelson Miles told the same thing to Geronimo. And told Geronimo, hey, this land, you can cultivate it. Are we going to bring you the American way of life? And as soon as he said that, as soon as Nelson Miles said that, we could see Geronimo inside a train on his way to prison. That's the way the United States government brings freedom and democracy to the world. Now, there's not a single country in Latin America where the United States, from Mexico all the way down to Tierra del Fuego in Argentina, there's not a single government in South America where the United States government is manipulating, pulling strings to make sure that it controls the whole continent south of the Rio Grande. If we read the newspapers, and the other day I was coming from Cuba and I was stopped in Fort Lauderdale, and I was kept for 4 hours. And I was told by 2 of the agents there, the custom agents, that he wanted to know what I was doing in Venezuela. He wanted to know what I was doing in Nicaragua. He wanted to know what I was doing in Cuba. He wanted to know why I had a bunch of cards from people who gave me the cards. And it's fascinating to hear 2 young men, they were young, asking me about what did I know about Maduro, President Maduro in Venezuela, and the killings that Maduro was doing. So my answer to him was, well, listen, if you have any evidence that Maduro has killed, if you witnessed it, then you shouldn't be talking to me, you should be talking to somebody else who probably can do something about that. But I doubt very much that you have witnessed Maduro killing anyone. But I asked him, can you tell me how many Colombians President Uribe killed during his administration? How many Colombians were forced out of Colombia by Uribe during the Uribe administration? How many drugs were brought into the United States from Colombia while Uribe was the president? How many Santos killed? How many U.S. military bases there are? I asked him how many U.S. military bases there are in Colombia. And he said, I don't know. And I said, well, I can give you the number. I can tell you exactly where all the bases are located and the purposes of those bases. Now, we talk about peace, we talk about violence, we talk about nonviolence. Well, when I arrived in Puerto Rico on the 9th of February last year, I was asked about what I was going to do in Puerto Rico. My message was a very simple one, and it's the only message that I can convey to anyone. There are two things that I know how to do. I know how to work, and I know how to struggle. But as far as I'm concerned, there is only one way for me, and I hope for all Puerto Ricans, to struggle against colonialism. And it has to be an act of love. I'm going to explain to you why. Because I know that most Puerto Ricans love to be Puerto Rican. I know that most Puerto Ricans love our culture, our language, our way of life. We love being what we are. Unfortunately, we are a colony of the United States. And colonialism is something that a lot of people don't really understand that good. Because the colonizer, no colonizer can control a colony without the help of the colonized. And we can look into Africa, we can look into Central America, we can look into South America, we can look anywhere in the world where colonialism has prevailed. We can look at India and see what the British were doing there, but they always depended on the help of the colonized. Because before the United States government invaded Puerto Rico in 1898, it had identified a Puerto Rican elite that was going to serve and help them to run the colony. And since 1898, the Puerto Rican elite has been there, pushed up, held there by the United States government. Recently, Donald Trump, your president, said that there was a lot of corruption in Puerto Rico. Well, corruption cannot take place in Puerto Rico unless the banking industry, unless the hedge funds, unless people who do not care at all about Puerto Rico are allowed to be to accept corruption. The United States government, it controls Puerto Rico. It has the obligation of finding out where the corruption is. If you read, if you want, the fiduciary is the responsibility of Washington. Now, Puerto Rico allegedly owes $74 billion to the banks, to hedge funds, to whoever lend money and bought bonds from Puerto Rico. We have asked the federal government to audit the debt. We want to know where the money was spent, because it was not spent on our school system, it was not spent on a health system, it was not spent in anything that is of benefit to Puerto Rico. So most likely, it went into the corrupt pockets in a certain way, Excuse me a second. It went, the corruption, the money, it went into the pockets of those who are part of the government. We know that. It went into the banking industry. It went into the hedge funds. Now, I would definitely like to know where the $74 billion went to, but I know that I'm not ever going to find out, not even a penny of the $74 billion. But in order for Puerto Rico to pay that $74 billion, President Obama, along with the Congress, along with the Senate, they imposed on Puerto Rico what is called a fiscal control board. And this fiscal control board determines how the budget that is in Puerto Rico, how it's going to be spent. And as a way to get money to pay that debt. Well, from 2012 up to now, probably close to 800 schools, public schools, have been closed in Puerto Rico. Right now, the university students are paying a tuition this year. It's almost 3 times what they were paying 2 or 3 years ago. Now, in a very poor country like ours, to come up with 3 times for a university student to come up with 3 times the money that was paid 3 years ago, that's a lot of money. So, I remember a University of Puerto Rico that was very dynamic, very dynamic. If we go to the University of Puerto Rico right now, we'll see probably half of the students that were there in 1971, 1972, 1973, 1980. That's the reality. There's a magic thing that the United States government has done with Puerto Rico. It's very, very, very sophisticated thing. Because this government, the government from this country, by 1971, it had done something that a lot of people pay very little attention to. It was already creating a system that was going to be affecting probably the whole world. There was a commission called the Trilateral Commission. And that Trilateral Commission said the following. The problem of the United States is, one, that there's an excess of democracy. Number 2, we need to globalize. Number 3, we need to privatize. Number 4, we need to regulate the banking industry. Number 5, we need to change some of the university system in the United States. In 1980, the student debt in this country was hardly visible. In 2012, the student debt in this country was $1.9 trillion. This is in this country. So the same thing was going to be implemented in Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico, practically every corporation, every public corporation that was in Puerto Rico was privatized. Go to Puerto Rico, there was a Puerto Rican telephone company, and it was privatized. And in that telephone company, people worked 24/7. The jobs were well-paying jobs. It was privatized, and all of a sudden, I invite any American, any person who wants to go to Puerto Rico to witness this. All we have is a shell of a building. But we have to question, where are the workers who work there? Since, for the last 25 years, the Puerto Rican people have not seen jobs being created. And all of a sudden, where there are probably 2.5, 3 million Puerto Ricans, there are 5 million Puerto Ricans living in the United States. That's called depopulation. And one of the first missions of the United States government once it arrived in Puerto Rico was to depopulate Puerto Rico. There was one Puerto Rican leader who said, what the United States government wants is the cage, but not the birds. And the cage is our small archipelago, the island of Puerto Rico, Vieques, Culebras, Desecheo, Mona, all the little islands around Puerto Rico. And that's what the United States government wants. And if we want to see gentrification in as it operates in the United States, we should go to Puerto Rico and see gentrification as it takes place in Puerto Rico. Gentrification displaces the poor, and in that particular area, you will see condominiums that go for $1 million, not being built for Puerto Ricans, but built for foreigners. And there's a group of people that has arrived in Puerto Rico during the past year, and they say that their paradise. These are the money, the funny money that goes around. So they in Puerto Rico, they say that that's the paradise. So from 5 million Puerto Ricans, we're down to probably a little bit over 3 million, most of them being forced to emigrate to the United States. Then all of a sudden, last year we had Hurricane Maria. And what Hurricane Maria did for us was to show us the level of poverty that existed in Puerto Rico, all hidden. And at the same time, to show us how generous Donald Trump can be, and how generous the U.S. Senate and the U.S. Congress can be. 5 different countries, as soon as Maria happened, 5 different countries offered us aid. Cuba was willing to send a bunch of professional, real good doctors with all the equipment to Puerto Rico. Venezuela offered us 2 million barrels of diesel. Mexico was willing to send people to help Puerto Rico. Panama, Costa Rica, Ecuador were willing to send supplies to Puerto Rico. But the President of the United States said, no, that cannot take place. We're not going to allow anything from any country to come to Puerto Rico, to the aid of Puerto Rico. FEMA arrived in Puerto Rico soon after the hurricane. And anything that was sent from Puerto Rico, from the United States to Puerto Rico, and many Puerto Ricans sent stuff to Puerto Rico, was confiscated by FEMA. And about 2 weeks ago, in what used to be Roosevelt naval base, probably $7 million worth of water was found. FEMA had confiscated it. It was in a warehouse, and the heat, it was so hot. Imagine it's been there for over a year. The water was over there over a year, warehoused. Rather than giving it to the Puerto Rican people, that's what the water ended up, and that water is unusable. And we needed water in Puerto Rico. But that didn't happen. If anyone in September, October, November, December of last year will go to the airport, we'll see all the stuff being warehoused. Things that people from the Puerto Ricans from the United States and people from good citizens of the United States have sent to Puerto Rico to help Puerto Rico. It had been warehoused and not given to the Puerto Rican people. So then one day Donald Trump arrived in Puerto Rico, and there were paper towels, and now you see him throwing paper towels to the Puerto Rican people. And that was funny. Yeah, he was laughing without a bit of shame, but he is the president of this country. how he got elected, it doesn't matter. He is the president. I'm fairly certain that in 2020, if he's allowed to run, he can be elected again because the Electoral College can do what the public cannot do. He can get probably, anyone can get 5 million votes more than Donald Trump if he were to run in 2020, yet the Electoral College would elect him because the Electoral College is in the hands, mostly all the states will have the power to elect Donald Trump. And that's the reality. But I don't want to get there. I want to maintain myself focused on colonialism. If the schools in Puerto Rico are closed, and we have a woman named Kelleher, doesn't speak Spanish. She makes close to $300,000 a year, and she's the Secretary of Education. How she got picked, I do not know. But I guarantee you one thing: as an educator, she will be a total failure. I don't think that she could hold a classroom together and educate a group of students. But that's the person that we have as Secretary of Education. We had a woman named Donahue making close to $500,000 running the electric company. And that electric company, when Hurricane Maria happened, showed us how it had been little put to the ground. It was almost totally inefficient and almost not able to deal with the problem that Maria caused. In order to electrify Puerto Rico, mostly all of us were without electricity for months. Mostly all of us were without water. When I arrived, by the way, I was in Philadelphia the 20th of September last year when the hurricane happened. I had come here, I had returned to Philadelphia from Rutgers University, where I had spent the day. I arrived here, and at 11 o'clock at night, I was told that the flight had been canceled, so I had to go to Chicago and stay there for 10 days before I was allowed to go back to Puerto Rico. But it was an amazing sight to see what had happened in Puerto Rico. I could see from the air what, and then when I hit the ground, I could see all this light, all the wires, all the light posts, everything down on the ground. And they made some contracts with American corporations to go and rebuild the electric, all the poles, everything that was needed. And one of the contracts went to a corporation that had 2 employees. It was a $300 million contract with 2 employees. And then they were sending workers from the United States into Puerto Rico to work on the electrical, the whole system of electricity. And we found out that these workers were in places, this is very luxurious hotels. They were working in Fajardo, they were living in Fajardo, they were staying in Fajardo. From Fajardo, they would go to Bayamón, it's like almost a 2-hour drive. They'll get there, pick up the heavy equipment. They'll go to Comerío, get there at 10:30 in the morning to start working, and leave the site around 2:30, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And they were getting $960 a day for the work that they were doing. So I'm mentioning this because Whitefish is a corporation that is somewhere in West, I think it's either somewhere Idaho, one of those states, and it had 2 workers. CNN did a report and followed the corporation, and it was through CNN that we were able to see what this corporation was. And he got a $300 million contract. And that's part of the corruption, that's part of the scandals. But imagine you're sending workers being paid $960 a day for working about 3 or 4 hours and enjoying themselves. If I had to, while we had no water, while we had no electricity. So that's what colonialism is to me. We definitely want peace. We definitely want nonviolence. We definitely want a system that works. I doubt it very much that unless we struggle for Puerto Rican independence, that we will be an independent and sovereign nation. And if we want to see peace in Puerto Rico, if we want to see nonviolence in Puerto Rico, then we have to do everything possible to make sure that people throughout the world can see our plight, see our conditions, and come to our rescue and come to help us to make Puerto Rico the nation that it has the potential of being. I am certain that Puerto Rico can be an independent and sovereign nation, because an independent Puerto Rico, first of all, we have plenty of resources for renewable energy. We didn't need to electrify Puerto Rico the way it's electrified. We have the sun, and there's enough energy in Puerto Rico, and we, little by little, we're bringing in renewable energy on our own. And we see how effective it is, how cost-effective it is, and that we don't need the hydrocarbons, or we don't need the charcoal that is brought into Puerto Rico to contaminate hydrocarbons. All the hydrocarbons affect adversely the environment. We can do without that, and electrify Puerto Rico with renewable energy. There's a plant in Puerto Rico that uses charcoal, and the plant in Puerto Rico pollutes. It was in the Dominican Republic, and in the Dominican Republic they discovered that it was damaging not only the environment but the health of the residents that were close to it, and it was close in the Dominican Republic, and then they put it in Puerto Rico. And we have people already with cancer there. That is related to the emissions from that plant. But what is interesting about this too is that people think, well, it's in Puerto Rico. No. What happens in Puerto Rico also affects this planet. It affects the rest of the planet, because emissions go up. The ashes from the coal go into the water, and that water moves around the world, and that the air moves around the world. So we are also, in a way, they're using Puerto Rico in a way that helps to destroy this planet. And I think that when we look at the conditions for what is Puerto Rico, what we can do about Puerto Rico, I think that what we're saying is, hey, we can do it, let us be, leave us alone. As a matter of fact, I will not ask the United States government for anything. Just leave us alone. Let us be. Get the hell out of Puerto Rico. Take your FBI out of Puerto Rico. Take everything that you have in Puerto Rico. Take it out, and we welcome it. And this is not a thing about us, because a lot of people think that we have hatred for the United States people. No, we have probably as much love for the Americans who are good citizens. We have as much love for them as we have for our own people, because we have 5 million Puerto Ricans here. So we cannot look down on any American who loves justice, who loves freedom, who wants this to be a better and more just world. We will not look down on anyone like that. On the contrary, we are their allies. And any American who has any love for freedom and justice will understand that colonialism is a crime against humanity. That it behooves all of us who love freedom and justice to make sure that that system of colonialism comes to an end, and that it behooves not only the citizens of this country, but the citizens of the world to help us decolonize Puerto Rico. Right now we have a project going on in Puerto Rico calling for the decolonization of Puerto Rico. The 20th of each month, we celebrate activities calling for the General Assembly of the United Nations to decolonize Puerto Rico, to take the issue of Puerto Rico and allow Puerto Rico to be an independent nation. In 1988, just to show that it's not only, this is a very, very serious problem. In 1988, the General Assembly of the United Nations passed a resolution affirming that the decade of the 90s was going to be the decade where all colonialism in the world would be eliminated. That was Resolution 4347, 1988. To this day, nothing has happened. Puerto Rico is the oldest colony in the world. We still colonize. And not a single colonized country has been able to become an independent and sovereign nation. So we're asking the General Assembly, if we pass the resolution, live up to it. We don't want things only in words. We want them in deed. And also in 1953, the same General Assembly accepted the farce that we Puerto Ricans had exercised our right to self-determination, a right that every single one of the people in this room, most likely, who are not Puerto Ricans, have been able to enjoy during their lifetime. So I am asking all of you to take into consideration the reality that we live, to think that it is a good thing to eliminate colonialism, because it is a crime against humanity. But it's also good to have a world that is better and more just. So with those words, I thank you for listening, and hopefully that someday in the future, all of us can say, hey, viva Puerto Rico libre, and enjoy the beautiful, beautiful Puerto Rico. You will be welcome to Puerto Rico. Thank you.
So we have some time for some questions. Who wants to start us off?
Thanks, Oscar and Matthew Ibok from Edward Waters College, Jacksonville, Florida. I can identify with you and all the realities about Puerto Rico you have indicated. I identify with you because I'm also from a country that was colonized, Nigeria, by British. And I do know, after my studies, a lot of research and my reflection, the British brought a lot of good things to Nigeria. And I think by extension, all other countries that they colonized. But they also made some mistakes that are backfiring now. Can you identify one good thing that America has done in Puerto Rico? 2, what is the percentage of your population that is seeking for independence?
Let me see, can you hear me? Yeah. I don't think that there's a good thing. Can I hear me? Use the microphone. Please call them.
Use this.
This is not working?
I'm not sure if this is for him.
I cannot identify a good thing that the United States government has done in Puerto Rico. First of all, occupying, invading, and military occupying a country without any reasons for it is automatically unacceptable. From that moment on, anything that the country does by occupying and invading is not good. Absolutely not good. By 1901, the decision of the United States government was of one, to depopulate Puerto Rico, because it needed the land for the U.S. sugar barons to be able to use Puerto Rico to grow sugar. And number 2, to use the land for military bases. By 1940, 13% of all Puerto Rico's land was being used for military purposes. Military bases all around Puerto Rico. The east, the west, the north, and the south. There were military bases all around Puerto Rico. So I don't think there is anything good that I can say that the United States government did in Puerto Rico, has done in Puerto Rico. Right now, if the school system in Puerto Rico is privatized, and it's going to be privatized, the student becomes a commodity, because public education is not the same thing as private education. Private education, those private corporations who will be owning the schools, what they want to do is maximize their profits and not provide a good education. As a matter of fact, of the almost 300 schools that are going to be closed in Puerto Rico right now, the Secretary of Education has invented this thing about taking to Puerto Rico, what we hear so much here in the States, called mobile units, because it's a metal box. And that's what Puerto Rico will be having in some of the schools for the students. Because they're closing schools, but they will be overpopulating the schools that will remain open. And bear this in mind, everybody knows that privatization of schools definitely makes the student a commodity. It's commodified, and all the main goal of any corporation is to make profits, and they're going to profit at the expense of the students. So that should be clear to all of us, especially those of us who are interested in education. Now, how many Puerto Ricans defend independence, support independence? Independence, anyone in Puerto Rico who supported independence was criminalized. So we became fearful of talking about independence, of waging any kind of struggle for independence. Historically, there has not been a single decade since 1898 where there have not been Puerto Ricans in U.S. prisons. Not a single decade. So you imagine 120 years with Puerto Ricans being in prisons in the United States simply for wanting Puerto Rico to be an independent nation. Us wanting to be independent. Okay? So I hope that will give you an idea of who supports independence, because it's impossible for us to really see who really supports independence. I can tell you this much, that mostly all Puerto Ricans love Puerto Rico. We don't want Puerto Rico to be taken over by anyone. We love our culture, we love our language, we love our way of life, and we're very happy people. You go to Puerto Rico and you will enjoy our way of life. So I cannot say to anyone how many Puerto Ricans support independence, but I know that the overwhelming majority of us love Puerto Rico, and we want Puerto Rico to be what Puerto Rico is, a nation of Puerto Ricans. As a matter of fact, as far as I'm concerned, Puerto Rico is the promised land for all Puerto Ricans wherever they are at right now. I hope I have answered your question.
My name is Alfonso Tiadi, and I listened to you a few minutes ago. You talk about the independence of Puerto Rico, and I think 2 years ago, I heard that there was some information circulating in the press that Puerto Rico was indebted to some, I think, banks or so in the tune of billions, and Puerto Rico could not pay their own debt. So we all know that running a country requires resources, requires fiscal discipline. And if Puerto Rico could not pay their own debt, Puerto Rico could not undertake some development that would benefit its people without outside help. What makes you think that when Puerto Rico gains her independence, she can operate independently of the United States?
What makes me think that Puerto Rico can be an independent nation without asking the United States government for help or seeking help from the United States? I'm fairly certain, I'm confident, very, very confident that it can be done. Now, the $74 billion debt, it's a $74 billion debt. That's not our debt. If we cannot identify the United States government, the fiduciary obligation in Puerto Rico, we don't control Puerto Rico. The Congress of the United States, 2 years ago, the Supreme Court said that it is the United States Congress is the one that has the power in Puerto Rico. So let the Congress do its fiduciary duty. Find out where the money went to, because we don't know. And I'm certain that no Puerto Rican benefited from the $74 billion debt. Now, we can play games with words, but let me say this. We will find out, eventually, we will find out where the money was spent. And we are going to find a way for the United States to pay for 120 years of a crime that has been committed in Puerto Rico. We will find out, and we're going to deal with it. I guarantee you that much. And I guarantee anyone that much. Because if there's a thing that we can do, is always find a way to find a solution to our problems. Any problem that is man-created has a solution. We will find it.
Hi, hello everyone. Hello all. Can you see me well? So his colleagues are recommending that he goes to the front. I'm from Gallaudet University. I'm going to stay right here. With your presentation really impacted me. I'm from Africa. Who else is from Africa? There's my fellow Afrikanese. Hello everyone. Yes. Some from colonization all over Africa, and we've experienced colonization, of course, and to be honest with you, I can't see anything good that has come from it, from colonization. So with that said, Puerto Rico has benefited from colonization. Do you feel, I can't relate to that when you say like even one thing positive came from it. You as a Puerto Rican, in some ways it might be a little bit different than us in Africa. Just interpreters getting clarification from you have a homogeneous society, and it's impactful. It's less impactful in Puerto Rico than it is in Africa, because we're a continent full of so many different countries. And so we also have been playing against one another as a result. So I'm a little bit off the point. You were speaking regarding independence, but I've read other stories that talks about statehood. Sorry, that's the interpreter getting clarification. Statehood, could you respond to that? Where do you stand on that? Do you have any ideas regarding statehood? And what are your thoughts on that?
We do not support statehood at all. Statehood would be the culmination of colonialism. And who wants to lose everything? Language, culture, way of life. I invite anyone here inside the United States to see what people whose land has been taken away from them, whose language has been taken away from them, whose way of life has been taken away from them. I have had the privilege of being in a Native American reservation, and I have witnessed what people who lose their identity, their way of life, their land, the way that they saw this land that was theirs, but they no longer have it. To see how dehumanized people are in those conditions, because if you don't have that was yours, that made you what you are, it is impossible to gain it again, to regain that. We can go to Hawaii. We can go to Hawaii. We can see the native population in Hawaii. Probably 23% of the population is native. But if we go to the prisons in Hawaii, mostly all the prisoners are native. If we go to Alaska, we will see the same thing. I guarantee you that much. Let's go to Alaska right now and see what has happened to the two last states, Alaska and Hawaii. They became states, and the natives are the ones who we're going to see in prison, whether it's in Hawaii or in Alaska. And that's probably what will happen to Puerto Rico. That's the reality, whether you like it or not, that's the fact. And anyone can go to Hawaii and see the Hawaiian. Hawaii's a state now. 1958, 1959, Alaska and Hawaii became states. Go see how the natives live in Hawaii, okay? So how can I accept, if there's already an example of what statehood does to the people, why would I want Puerto Rico to become a state? Where's the microphone? Okay.
Hi, my name is Clement Mtambo. I'm also from Africa, like my brother said there. And I'm also a product of, the disease called colonialism, which is actually still prevailing in our society right now. So, in my perspective, in my perspective is that the biggest problem we're having as developing, countries is the idea of human flights or the brain drain, so to say. You just mentioned that there are about 5 million Puerto Ricans, coming to the U.S. They're looking for jobs, they want to sustain their lives or improve their education. So my question is, what are some of the measures that you think you could implement and attract all these, people coming to, like going back to Puerto Rico and, improvise their skills?
Puerto Ricans in the United States, and I know many Puerto Ricans who have moved to the United States. Mostly all of our professionals, by the way. A lot of them are professional teachers, doctors, engineers. And there's a way that they don't have to, if they cannot go back to Puerto Rico, they can help Puerto Rico right from here. The technology is there, we can communicate back and forth, we can help just using the technology that there is. But I am fairly certain that once Puerto Rico becomes an independent country, many of the people who are here will go back to Puerto Rico. And again, I am certain of this. We are very resourceful. We have the human resource to deal with the issues of Puerto Rico. What we need more than anything else for the United States to get out of Puerto Rico, to everything that has been privatized, we're going to take over. It's going to be ours. So definitely, we can survive. We can do it.
Hello? I've been waiting for you to get out of prison for 30 years. It's so wonderful to be in your presence. Thank you for your social courage. Thank you for your resilience. You've never lost your clarity of mind. You've never lost your heart and your brilliance. So thank you for your work and for your writings. I would love to work with you on investigating where the money was hemorrhaged from Puerto Rico. I'd like to begin with Lehman Brothers and Goldman Sachs. They were headquartered in San Juan, and I have reason to believe that much of the debt was lining their pockets. I have friends who worked there that tried to blow the whistle on this. So let us work together on that, perhaps to uncover where it went. And your analysis reminds me so much of Naomi Klein's book about shock and awe, where she saw that, the tsunami in Aceh, Indonesia, and Sri Lanka resulted in privatization, where the private corporations came in after the disaster, or in Katrina, or after the invasion of Iraq, the private contractors all swooped in like vultures to privatize those areas of the world and line their own pockets. So thank you for connecting the dots for us with Puerto Rico as well, where they're trying to privatize everybody's mines and water and everything. Could you please tell us the day that you got the news that you would be released, and the day you got out of prison? What did that feel like?
On the 17th of May, 2017, my lawyer told me that President Obama had granted me the commutation of my sentence, but that I still had until the 17th of May to remain in prison. So it was not an immediate commutation of sentence. I was sent to Puerto Rico on the 9th of February. I arrived in Puerto Rico. The day that my lawyer told me that President Obama had commuted my sentence, she asked me, how did I feel? And I told her that I felt like I had felt 3 days ago, 3 years ago, 10 years ago, because I had to prepare myself for the moment that most likely I was going to spend the rest of my life in prison. And so I had been prepared for that. And I will never engage in this whole thing of an optimism that is illusory, optimism that is delusional sometimes. So I refuse to do that. I always said I will be ready if they give me clemency, or I'll be ready if I have to spend the rest of my life in prison. She said, how come? I said, well, it's simply, I was prepared. So it took me years of preparation. The 17th of May, 2017, probably at 6:30 in the morning, in front of our house, there were about 300 people singing. This is chorus. These are different groups singing, and then I came out. And I was surprised to see how many people and how happy they were. So, of course, I was extremely happy to be with them. And that was the day that I made the announcement where I told not only for Puerto Rico to know, but for the world to know that I was not going to be promoting any kind of violence. There's no idea in my head or no will in my heart to go and promote violence in Puerto Rico. And that has been my message to the Puerto Rican people, and that's my message to the world. I believe that we have enough love in our heart for Puerto Rico to make Puerto Rico the nation that it has the potential of being. So that's how I did. That's what I said on the 17th of May. It was a very joyful day, and big celebrations all over Puerto Rico, thousands and thousands of photos taken. So it was a real great day.
Hi, Oscar. I'm Belen. I'm a student at American University. You mentioned earlier that there's only one way for Puerto Ricans to struggle against colonialism, and that it's through an act of love. I was just wondering if you could elaborate more on what that act of love is, and if you think it can be translated to heal other communities around the world that have been victimized by colonization as well.
When we allow hatred and fear to get into our hearts, we are carrying a burden, a big burden. Hatred and fear blinds us. So I don't want to be that person who goes around promoting hatred and fear. What would an act of love? What is it that makes us capable of loving? And I think that we have the inner strength to find that love. And if we get up every morning, and tell ourselves, hey, do not allow hatred and fear to enter your heart, fill your heart with love, we will be better human beings. We could probably smile when we see a person coming to us needing something and we can give it to them. Probably it could be just a greeting, a good morning. I can see, like in Puerto Rico, I can when I walk, I always greet people. And if they want to talk, I'll take time to talk to them. But I will not entertain any kind of hatred or any kind of fear. In prison, in order to survive, one of the things that was crucial for me was to always show the other prisoners that I was not going to be overwhelmed by hatred or fear. I showed the jailers the same thing. I did not care whether they hated me, but I would never come to them with an attitude that showed hatred or fear. And that's because I know fully well that we will not, human beings, are endowed with the power to have love in their hearts. And it's simple. Now, imagine a person been in prison for 12 years, 4 months, in a monochromatic environment, single color, being in a cell for 22 hours and 45 minutes, 22 hours and 45 minutes every day, not being able to see that transition of the sun into darkness. All of us have evolved with colors. We have evolved with that transition of day to night. We have evolved looking at the sun. We have been allowed to have the sun touch us. Fresh air. For 12 years and 4 months, I did not have access. Once a week, I will be taken out for 2 hours to a yard. And that's the only time that I will have access to the sun. So, bear in mind that for 12 years and 4 months, this Puerto Rican spent under those conditions. Amnesty International in 1986 declared that those conditions were a crime, a legal crime that was being committed against us. Now, if any one of you is interested, there's no blood in my hands. There's no blood in my hands. I can put my head on a pillow and sleep very, very easy. Because nobody can say, hey, that Puerto Rican killed me, or that Puerto Rican did this to me, or that Puerto Rican did that to me. In my community in Chicago, when I came back in 1967, I would spend sometimes 16 hours a day organizing in that community. It was never a burden for me. So what I can tell you is that within us, we have the power to love. We can find it. We don't have to engage. We don't have to be a Donald Trump. We don't have to go back to the times of Joseph McCarthy. I will give you a good example of a human being who was full of hatred, who had so much hatred that he promoted killing people. And that's J. Edgar Hoover, who was the director of the FBI. And his best friend was Roy Cohn, who in 1952 was the prosecutor in the case of Julius and Ethel Rosenberg, sentenced them to death. Both of them were killed. And he was also the mentor of Donald Trump. So now you can see how why Donald Trump is the way he is. Now, imagine having the mindset of a J. Edgar Hoover, who said that for Puerto Ricans, his goal was to eliminate Puerto Rican nationalism. But Puerto Ricans for not only 120 years, on the 23rd of September this year, we celebrated the 150th anniversary of the Grito de Lares, which was when we took up arms against Spain in 1868. It wasn't a big uprising, but 1868. So within us, there's a long history of struggling against colonialism. It's not new, it's not the only. We are the oldest colony in the world, and hopefully that soon we will no longer be a colony. But I say this, do not allow yourself, never allow yourself, especially the young people, to have hatred and fear enter your heart, because that's a load that you don't need. You can be happy, you can be enjoying life, you can be very productive citizens, you can be a citizen of the world. But if you allow hatred and fear to get into you, you will be a miserable human being, because you will never be able to enjoy life. I can enjoy life no matter where I'm at.
I think maybe we'll have two questions and we can take them both. And then, Oscar, you can close up. One and then two.
Hello, my name's Kristen. I'm from American University. Half of my family I'm half Puerto Rican. I've been wondering, what is something that you would advise to Puerto Rican Americans who are in the mainland that they don't know about the island culture? Because I've never visited there. I've heard narratives about my family growing up on the island, and I haven't been able to go and come to terms with that part of my identity because I feel in between. So what would you advise to a population like that?
Let's hear the second question.
Hey, how are you? I'm so happy to see you. I was part of your campaigns and so happy to see your work. One of the things I was thinking about is actually having a conversation with somebody earlier, and we were talking about decolonization and decoloniality as not a metaphor. Particularly like in the United States, cities across the United States are gentrified, being gentrified. We had an incident with Starbucks, and I was just thinking about their response, and every time a Starbucks shows up in the community, they're right on the edge of a community being gentrified. So it's even more than they owe than just a diversity training for the week. How do we actualize, because I believe and I know from the work of you and others, Friends for No, people thinking about decoloniality and decolonization, that is not a metaphor. And as my friend Mike D said earlier, unless you're giving back land, it's not decolonization. How do we actually engage that from a place where people are rooted in property ownership, in wealth, middle class wealth in their jobs, right? All of these things. How do we actualize decoloniality and decolonization without it being just lip service?
I would like to respond to you first. I want to say something to you very special. I think when we look at gentrification, we are looking at a phenomenon that is probably something that should be repudiated. It is not about creating a better environment. It is not about making a city look better. It is about how can they do something? How can they do something to take people from there, remove them from there? I think it's 1969 when the Kerner Commission on Crime came up with the idea of eliminating all the public housing around downtown Chicago. And the reason for this, he said, was that downtown Chicago was the heartbeat of the economy, not only of Illinois, but of the whole Midwest. And that they could not allow to have those people so close to downtown Chicago. This is a year after Dr. King was assassinated. And that's a year after all the riots took place in 1968. The Kerner Commission on Crime was created exactly for that reason, to come up with ideas of how they could get rid of the people. And those people primarily was African Americans, because mostly all the public housing in that area was being populated by African Americans. It was an object, it was a project of hatred, that gentrification that took place in Chicago. If we go to Chicago, we see all that area had been gentrified. Now, why cannot we think of populating an area, making it beautiful, but for everybody, rather than for a few individuals who can get a home for $1 million, because that's how the prices of those homes around the downtown area are all $1 million condominiums, all $1 million. If you're a millionaire, you're going to live there. But if you're poor, you're not going to live there. It is a way of discriminating. It's a way of perpetuating racism. So those are the things that we should avoid. Those are the things we should eliminate. We should eliminate racism. I'm gonna share something with you that some people may not like. When I came home, there was an exhibition of my artwork. I took a board and cut 4 pieces of canvas, and I painted one piece of canvas white, 1 piece of canvas black, 1 piece of canvas red, 1 piece of canvas yellow. Now, is there such a thing as a human race that is yellow? I haven't seen them. If there's a human race that is red, I haven't seen them. If there's a human race that is white, I have not seen them. And if there's a human race that is black, I have not seen them. There's a book by Edward Said that is probably worthwhile reading. And we see those who had the power to define people. And the power to define is a very, very strong power. They define and categorize races. For me, there's only one race, and that's the human race. Now, I celebrate all my roots. Puerto Rico is a very, 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 very mixed race. We are very, very mixed. I'm proud. We celebrate our African roots. We celebrate our native roots. We celebrate everything that makes us Puerto Rican. I think that if we see anything that is not human, in us, then we're not part of the human race. If we see anything that is not human, as long as we're human, there is such a thing as a human race. I don't see anything else but a human race. Probably people say, well, no, no. I think that we are in this planet, and mostly every single human being is not what Hitler used to say, it's just this pure. There is no such thing. There is no such thing. I think that if we have the courage to look at how we became, how we have migrated, how we have moved from one area to another area, if we look, the pigmentation of our skin is not what defines us. Now, we should be proud if we have roots, whether we're from Ireland, whether our roots are Irish, whether our roots, whatever we are, or if we are, it doesn't. If we're from the Arabian countries, it doesn't matter where we're from. The common thing that we have is our humanity. And so I believe that there's only one race, and that's the human race, no other race. So probably people can take issue with that. I would love to discuss it with anyone who has issues with that. Now, to my young half Puerto Rican, one of the things that I recommend to young people is to study both Puerto Rican history and American history. It's always like in my mind, this nation started with 13 colonies, but it's got from the Pacific all the way to the Atlantic, south of Canada, all the way to Mexico. Half of Mexico used to be Mexican territory, but if we go into the southwest from Texas all the way to California, that's part of the United States today. And I remember reading Henry David Thoreau going to prison for refusing to give money. He said, I will not pay the poll tax because that money will be used in a war against Mexico. And so there's something about people who can see how much damage, how much destruction we can create. So read some history about Puerto Rico, read some history about the United States, and come to Puerto Rico. We'll be more than happy you come to Puerto Rico, we take you around, and you see what Puerto Rico looks like, and you can look and find your ancestors, and enjoy your time in Puerto Rico. So to see Puerto Rico with all its beauty and all its limitations. And that will give you a very, very good appreciation of what it is to be Puerto Rican, and that part of Puerto Rico that's in you can discover it.
Colleagues and comrades, let's hear it for Oscar Lopez Rivera.